The way Deepak got into this space is actually quite interesting. He started like most young Indian men do in engineering college, logged video cassettes for his first job. From there, somehow got into Prime Sports, then MTV Pop Stars, Star One with the Great Indian Laughter Challenge, and then finally Endemol, where he is now managing director and CEO. And he's really climbed the corporate ladder with what many people describe as dedication, determination, and also the ability to understand the logistics of the business of the sector, not just the creative side. So delighted to welcome you as well.
Thank you.
And finally, Vishesh Bhatt sitting on the far left, who is an acclaimed film director, producer. He's the CEO of Vishesh Films. Obviously comes from a lineage which has great history in the Indian film cinema on the creative side. Vishesh himself has studied at the NYU Tisch, Maurice Kanbar Institute of Film and Television, as well as the USC School of Cinematic Arts. He co-produced his first film, Gangster, in 2006 at the age of 21, which was an instant success. Since then, has also directed Murder 3. In case you think the only movies he produces have this very dark side, he's also produced Ashiki 2, Raz 3, Jannat, for which he wrote the story and screenplay, so really a great variety there. Was nominated in 2014 for the Star Guild Award for Best Debut Director, and this year received the Guild Award for his critically acclaimed film, City Lights. This is a fabulous panel, just wanted to welcome all of them. So we could go on for 3 hours. I wanted to start with a simple question, but which might sort of give us some insight into how each of the 3 panelists views what's happening in the media entertainment space for the last decade. Maybe I can start with you, Deepak. But the question really applies to all 3, which is what, in your view, is the most significant development that has taken place in the media entertainment space in India over the last decade?
Well, I'd like to speak more about the broadcast and entertainment space. Largely, I think what's really burst the bubble is the demand and supply. In the last 10 years, 12 years, little over 12 years, we've grown from like 10 channels to 800 channels. So that's where the opportunity lies for individuals like me to really look at trends in other emerging markets, to see what we could get into the Indian context, look at who are the actual eyeballs who are really sampling this content. I mean, there was a time that all our mothers were really watching television. I think that's a given today. We as content professionals are really now looking beyond that. Who are the new set of eyeballs that we can capture in the broadcast and the media sector, and that clearly is the youth. And that's really the driving force. That's the gear change for a lot of content professionals like me. Is that what do we cater in the media space for this new generation youth? These guys are not so loyal as our mothers and housewives who are watching TV, who are habituated to really watch a certain show at a certain time on a certain channel, follow a certain character. I mean, these are shifty, flirty eyeballs, and what do you really give these guys? So that's where disruptive, differentiated content comes to the play, and that's where I think we've made some sort of a difference with a lot of reality television that we brought into the country. We've just brought in a lot of those trends, and I think that's just the tip of the iceberg, clearly, because now where do you take the Indian broadcast landscape? What is the new content that you could dish out? Because reality television moved from being a weekend consumption to like prime time, daily, Monday to Sunday kind of consumption. Now it's moved to where everybody is really watching their reality shows on tablets, phones. I mean, this is clearly the closest screen that you're really catering to. So obviously, we're constantly evolving as we go, and we're trying to see what could be the new frontier, what could be the new set of content that we could throw out to the youth, so that's really.
Right. So in some sense, in many ways, the same trends we're seeing here, but really multiplied. In a sort of, by a different order of magnitude, right? Going from 10 to 800 channels, mobile, obviously more people on mobile in India than in almost any other country in the world.
Yeah.
From the creative side, how do you deal with that? Right.
Absolutely, and it's an opportunity because yeah, it's 10 to 800. It's different languages, primarily 7, 8 different languages. You know, we make Big Brother, Big Boss in like 3 different languages in the country. So it's obviously an opportunity. I mean, it's pretty much like the European subcontinent. I mean, there's languages, there are different cultures, there are different superstars, there are different talent. So obviously, it's a huge opportunity, and I think we've just not tapped in completely. I think we're still figuring out what should be the new set of rules in this game to really take it to the next level.
Yeah. Vishesh, let me come to you. So Deepak's talking about proliferation, massive growing of the pie, and catering to different audiences. Right. Sitting where you sit, what do you see as the biggest developments?
I think for film, there's been a lot of growth in the industry in terms of its penetration. But specifically, the way I see it is that the audiences are now, even with the youth, have changed the way they consume and everything. And like Deepak said, I think they've been like big in terms of what they did for television. They broke the, from taking it from mothers and everything to even the youth coming in. I think his difficulty could probably be that after the reality boom that they got in the fictional space, how to keep them engaged. So I think in the film business also now, cinema has been the same for over 100 years. Yeah. I think it's not just in an Indian context, but around the world, cinema as a format is being discussed as its relevance and its consumption. And with this consumption, now you have to see that the audiences that are there, and what are they using, and what do they really want to consume, and how they interpret cinema. Mm-hmm. So I think that is the conversation that is going on, and a country like India, which is changing so much, globalization being part of it, but India is, there's so many Indias, and I think the difference is that for filmmakers to find that balance is a constant discussion that's going on. And so we're seeing a variety of content that we can cater to for something like that you mentioned before, City Lights, at a film that we've done. There's another film that we're coming in, which will be kind of challenging the Hollywood studios during their summer releases. Avengers will be coming around the same time as our film, and our film is also oriented towards a superhero-esque kind of thing. Now, to see how these films fare every year as everything changes is a new experience for us. And from there, then we try to base it on how everything will go forward from there.
Great. Rahul?
Well, actually, I just wanted to sort of lay the outlines of what I'm going to say. There's always a great temptation when one is on panels like this to forecast a trend, or to acknowledge a trend or a growth or some kind of movement. So let me just put some facts before you and then give you my point of view. The media pie in the country is $15 billion. 50% of it is broadcasting. Cable, DTH, etc. is 20%. Digital, radio, music, live events, 20%. And film is 10%. So I want to speak about film because obviously that's what I know best.
How many of you would have guessed that, by the way? I mean, the TV space is 70% of the total pie. I mean, that's a stunning figure. And film is 10%, which is not...
And the total pie is $15 billion. Disney by itself is $40 billion. So you have to understand, with 800 channels, with the massive, massive numbers we're talking about in that country, look at the size of the pie today. So stay with me. We are 1/7 of humanity. We should be, this entire pie should be at least 4 times more. We are still, as we discussed prior to this, in television, we are very advertising dependent. We are not subscription dependent as yet. Of course, and you'll be speaking about DTH, digitization in a bit. Cinema, Hollywood is not even 7% of of the pie of India, of cinema films shown in India. China and France, with their quotas intact, still have 40% of their film pie taken up by Hollywood product. Piracy in our country is down from 200% to 25%. The last 10 years, however, not much has moved apart from ticket pricing, which has increased 3 to 4 times. Multiplexes are 65% of revenues, single screens 35%. Footfalls have increased 10% in 10 years. Despite 44 million households having DTH, pirated channels will play for 20 rupees a film. In any case, on the 12th Sunday after a film releases, Vishesh, your film is shown on satellite. So I was having a long chat with Ronnie Screwwala, and he's pretty formidable when it comes to tapping someone's brains, picking someone's brains for something like this. So Ronnie has given me a lot of the inputs, but how to actually put it together is something I sat and worked out after I had spoken to him. The satellite revenues have remained flat for the last 5 years. Now, let's say that it's flat. The pie hasn't grown much, and the growth itself has been very flat for 10 years. This is a looming problem. How do we actually increase the size of this pie? And speaking with Ronnie, and this is something that he was also talking about, which I must share with you, he said, look, as far as studios are concerned, it's a franchise model, Bharat. Superman 1, 2, 3, 4. Do not even make a movie if there's no 4 or 3. That franchise model, by the very nature, and we have seen this, it swings and roundabouts. 1 will do well, 2 will do badly, 3 will be a great one again, and it evens out. The real answer, and this is something that all of us believe in, is to get great scripts, great actors, reduce costs, and refuse to give in to the 12th Sunday window. PK is a great example. Right? Apart from having one of India's biggest superstars, it's a great example of what happened. The idea is to actually hold hard and not succumb to saying, look, in any case, this is going to go on the 12th Sunday, and these guys are going to, that's not going to increase share of the pie. Let me give you figures about PK. There are a total of 5 million non-resident Indians in the US. 1 million saw PK in the theaters. There's no free TV on PK in a hurry, and there's very little piracy. The footfalls moved with such alacrity there that they were number 6 in the first week in the US box office. So there is scope if you're prepared to hold, of course, if you have a great product, a great story, a great star, etc. The share for PK was 33% abroad and 66% in India. Normally it's 25-75. Now let's talk about creativity. The creative arc over the last, forget 10 years, I believe over many, many decades, has more or less, I contend, remained the same. Let's take the 70s. I'm talking 75 to 85. Vishesh, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Zanjeer to Sharabi, if anybody knows Hindi cinema here. That's those 10 years. In those 10 years, you had Muqaddar Ka Sikandar, Zanjeer, Sholay, Amar Akbar Anthony, Kala Patthar, etc. Then you had middle-of-the-road cinema. Andhi, Anand, Guddi, Chupke Chupke, Mili, Abhiman, Mausam, Balika Badhu, Alap. Then you had gritty art house cinema. Garam Hawa in 71, Sham Benegal's great quartet, Ankur Nishant Manthan Bhumika, Said Mirza's Arvind Desai ki Ajib Dasta, Albert Pinto in 80, Money Calls Ghanshiram Kotwal in 1979. So you had all 3 streams active and thriving and getting releases in the middle 70s to the middle 80s, which, if you were to just quickly fast forward into today, is the same. You have all the Ekta Tigers and all the really big blockbusters coming up, clearly formulaic, Singham, etc. Then you have the middle-of-the-road cinema. I guess you might, what would we call middle-of-the-road cinema today, Vishesh? Queen. Well, Queen is pretty edgy.
Yeah.
Queen is pretty edgy. Yeah, I mean, okay, so let me just at least say that there will be great scripts, an attempt to have different scripts with excellent acting and good writing and production values. I know Hawai Zade didn't do well. Bangistan is coming up.
Right.
Dam Laga Ke Haisha has just come up. So there's definitely an attempt to say, let's do the other stuff also, and let's see whether the numbers can actually make sense. The stuff that I do, apart from 14 people and their dog, but that stuff also is produced. Why there's a squeeze on that stuff is obviously because P&A becomes so expensive nowadays to publicize the Japanese wife. But I have a great hope that once 4G comes in, we're going to have, it's going to go straight to the internet like it went straight to DVD. But I'm sort of digressing. The point is this: commercially, it's been flat for the last 10 years. Creatively, it's been the same, my content, even from the 50s, when there was a rush of patriotic nationalistic cinema, which was mainstream, but there was also the edgy art house stuff that Bimal Roy was doing. Right. You know, so it's, after all, Ray made Pather Panchali, Opu Shanshar, Oparajito, and the other one that won the Golden, Charulata. So he won the Golden Bear, the Golden Lion, and the Palme d'Or at Berlin, Venice, and Cannes in his first 3 movies. I mean, that was an astonishing moment. So I think that creatively it remains the same. There will always be filmmakers exploring those 3 streams, but commercially it's been flat for the last 10 years.
I told you this was going to be entertaining. So you've given us a lot to talk about. Can I, Vishesh, just come back to something that Rahul referred to? Commercially, it's been flat. Which, you know, one interpretation is the fact that it's flat is actually a victory.
Right.
Given that 10 years ago we were worried about piracy, poor infrastructure, just all kinds of issues with cinema. But can you just speak to that that aspect?
See, I think one of the things like what Rahul is saying right now also, the recent challenges actually with the satellite that he's talking about is that forms a big, the TV forms a big part of the revenue of films as well, the TV sales. Now what's happened in the last 1 year especially, there's kind of panic there, is this with all these great numbers of the boom in television and subscription going up and everything, TV channels have, I mean, supposedly got together and said, why are we funding the stars? The costs have gone up. So they are doing a price correction there. And a lot of big films are now in trouble because they started banking on that the theatrical sales have kind of, they are that much, they are not increasing. And I got an interesting statistic from a distributor just before I came in, saying that everyone keeps talking about that the penetration of cinemas is not adequate enough in India, more multiplexes need to come, and yes, that's true, they do need to come. But out of the 5,000 screens that are there or more, apparently it's 1,500 screens that give 94% of the revenue. So it's ultimately still the cities and those centers that are still contributing. From the time that Rahul's talking about those films and the current films, the distribution circuits and the shares that they've returned, that's Bombay, Delhi and everything that they've broken up, the percentages still remain the same. Maybe it's got to do with growth, maybe it's got to do, I don't know, with approach, I don't know what it is, but it is that some of those things are still the same.
Yeah, one PK doesn't make a summer. I mean, PK was 600 crores, I mean, all told, so. Yeah.
So within India, what's happening is also that within India, it's not changing, even though the audiences have changed, the demographics have changed, the revenue shares from those centers and all have not changed. So in percentages, they remain the same. And I think being flat is not such a bad thing right now. But what I think the challenge now going forward is that with this TV boom happening, how much are filmmakers, like for example, DVD was a big business here from when I was here 10 years ago. DVD sales were 50% of the revenue for most Hollywood films. And theatrical was, I think, about 25%, and 25% was the remaining ancillary rights. That has changed here dramatically. I think Hollywood is also trying to guess that, judge that. So this whole transition of formats and consumption is now what filmmakers need to figure out in all formats, that how are they going to get their revenues with. Where we meet our challenges is that when you're trying to greenlight a film, so what you're talking about middle of the road. So the film that I did in 2006 as a co-producer called Gangster, and then we did a film called Jannat, which I wrote. Post that, even though I've continued there, what has happened is there's this whole baggage of making it a franchise model. And I mean, we've done well with it, but at the same time, that the only thing that the satellite channels and anyone will give you revenue, even if the content is same, is different, is that why don't you put a franchise there? This is done well, this will get us minimum numbers, and that's the only way that then you can get this kind of fixed satellite rate. So I think the industry is trying to evolve, but with coming off the studio system, I think there's a lot more content being created, but at the same time, it's trying to follow some traditional paths.
Rahul raised some issues around creativity, and I want to come back to that because that's a really important point. But Deepak, just to come back to you,
I just want to add a point to that. when you jump from 10 to 800, you know, it's like a big leap that you're taking, you know, and you know, where is all that content going to come from? And you know, you got to understand India.
But the 10 to 800 channels total viewership, I mean, it's obviously not multiplied 80-fold.
Of course not.
Just give us a sense of what those numbers are.
You know, it would be about maybe 30-40%.
Okay.
Yeah. But coming back to my point, you know, when you jump from 10 to 800, where is all that content going to come from? Who's going to create it? And the Indian psyche, you know, is still a single TV household where everybody's sitting down and watching TV at dinner time together, you know, and everybody wants to watch their daily soap, everybody wants to watch their reality shows, everybody wants to watch a movie, you know, so that's where it's fueling the demand. That's where I come back to the demand and supply. So which is where the satellite prices boomed up in the last 5 to 7 years. There's been a huge correction as we speak. We're seeing that as producers right now, where there's I think it's a downtime. We're not too happy about it, but you know, but the correction in the long haul would, I think, benefit all of us.
Yeah.
Just speaking to the business model, since clearly all this depends so much on the TV business model. Obviously, you know, you mentioned advertising, which has been important. But what's interesting is this share of GDP, you know, that's going into TV and film. It's still much, much lower than almost any other country.
Yeah.
So you're relying on subscription, where we know there's reporting issues. Just give us a sense of what's happening in the landscape with digitization and what the implications are.
Well, the last government started the digitization finally. I mean, I think we're just about 50 or 60% through. I don't know how accurate it is at this point in time. Only time will tell. But obviously, you know, largely a lot of our broadcast and production business models really stand on advertising revenues. You know, given the final digitization phase, the subscription revenues kick in, and that's going to be really the amplifying factor. You know,
and what are we talking about? And what's the multiplier?
It'll be 50%. You know, it's really half of it is only been tapped in the so many years gone by. So it's really the next gear change is something that's going to come up, and I think that's going to really what's going to happen. More channels are going to come up. Most channels are going to launch newer time bands, which I'm happy about, because I can then, you know, create content for those time bands, and you know, so that, you know, it's only fueling more and more. So I think we've just hit 50% of the potential in the Indian media and entertainment space so far.
Interesting. The picture that Rahul you painted is a very interesting one when it comes to the creative side. Obviously, you know, at a high level, if you have 800 channels, you have the film industry being what it is, more viewers, you need more content, as you said. And you know, one way to look at it is there's many different formats coming in. There's 3D animation thrillers, there's finite fiction and reality TV, there's English movies and more art house cinema. But at the same time, the picture you painted was actually it's more or less similar to what happened 20 years ago. I just love for each of you to speak to this. I mean, in terms of the creative side, because each of you has been involved to some extent in innovating. You know, is there a certain amount of sameness, or is there enough innovation happening? What are the bottlenecks?
I think from what Rahul was referring to, that the streams are the same. Content is definitely changing. That's not same. That's evolving constantly. But it's only the streams, that the three classes that he defined, those continue to remain the same. And actually, I had a question to ask Deepak on this, was that maybe he knows better. What's happening is that if the theaters and their revenues are now kind of peaking, and till, you know, there's more infrastructure going into that, television and everything else, or internet, being that it can give room, internet specifically can give more room to new content. Those revenues now, and the new thing, which is this correction that's taking place in satellite, there's also this strong insistence by all satellite channels to take your internet rights and bundle it up and flat out take it all. So anything that has growth potential is being taken away by the broadcasters. And if you do not adhere to that, you're left unsold. So as filmmakers, as producers, even to know those bottom lines is become difficult, because you don't know, and if there's any upsides, you're not going to get that. So it's kind of a predetermined price model that we are making our films on. And earlier on, actually, Rahul, the focus being more on theatre, and you could get, you know, all your revenues and all your costings are based on that, on theatrical. people could still say, okay, there's an audience for this, and if there's an upside, they would get something out of that.
Right.
But since all costs have gone up and there is a dependence on the broadcasting element and these rights, and they are going away, it creates a lot of.
Deepak, do you think the bundling of broadcast rights and internet rights is going to hold, or will they slowly be hived off? Because internet's going to be a huge revenue earner in the future, no?
No, absolutely. I think consciously somewhere someone is trying to slice the rights. You know, there's pricing pressure, so you got to really package it and in a new way, try and cost it and price it and take it back into the market. So obviously, you know, we're also aping what the US, the UK, and the, you know, other evolved markets are doing. So slicing the rights and, you know, really, you know, hawking it off. So I mean, you know, just trying to find newer business models, newer areas where we could juice out the revenue. And coming back to your question of, you know, I agree content is very cyclic. You know, what happened like 10 years ago, you know, comes back in fashion, you know, really at some point in time. So I think we as content producers have got to really time that leap of faith. You know, at what point in time are you going to bring in what kind of content? So I think, you know, content to me is like fashion. What goes out of fashion comes back into fashion. So
you talked about the global audience, and it's nice to know that the NRIs are in effect subsidizing some movies. I'm just kidding. Vishesh, let me ask you this and then come to the others. In making movies or series, how do you think of local versus global audience? Does it even enter the picture at all, or?
Actually, 5-6 years ago, I think maybe 7 years ago, there was a lot of discussion that, you know, there was this whole trend of a lot of Punjabi films or Hindi films which are oriented towards like Punjabi music in them. They were thinking a lot of the North Indian audience in UK, US and everything. I think currently that discussion is not holding anymore. So it's still now, instead people are looking at urban centers versus, you know, something that's for mass consumption within India and driven by Indian demand. So what I think has happened now is just that films with big star casts will probably fetch you more, but the cost of putting the films out in global markets is quite high for a lot of the medium films, so they don't even do the releases anymore over there.
So let me ask the three of you a question about globalization. So since that's the theme in part of the conference for the last 2 days. We had the Oscars 2 weeks ago, and for the 10th year in a row, no Indian film even nominated in the Oscar foreign language category. So that's a total of about 50 films in 10 years. This is the biggest film industry in the world. How should one interpret that? Does it matter? Should we care? Just any of you.
Okay, look, I mean, you're doing this too. You're provoking me now.
That was what I was asked to do.
The Oscars are a tiny private West Coast ceremony that celebrate the best of American cinema. Not even the best of world cinema. For that you have to go to Cannes, right? I mean, Kiarostami has never won an Oscar. Is he crushed? I mean, you have to understand that the best cinema is not being made in the English language. Hasn't been made in English language for many, many years. So you can't just have one category called foreign language film made by a renegade filmmaker who has nothing to do with this country, but Nigeria gets the foreign language film. How does that work? I mean, how stupid are they? It's ridiculous. How do you say Nigeria gets this when this Nigerian filmmaker might even be desperately out of favor with the powers that be in Nigeria? So, I mean, there are so many problems with that. Scorsese gets an Oscar for his worst film. I mean, how do you do that? Because he's on the East Coast, he's not on the West Coast. Who cares? It's just fantastic marketing. And I doff my hat to that. But is it a barometer of the best cinema? Really, is Birdman the best film of last year? I'm asking that question because if you watch cinema across the world, it will blow your head apart. Your eyeballs will pop out. So do you really think that any filmmaker is looking, and true filmmaker is looking to say, I must get there? No. Really, what this world is crying out for is the World Cinema Awards. Right. Have it in London, get Kiarostami, get Majid Majidi get Alejandro Inarritu, get the Korean filmmakers, get those guys and say, okay, anybody, everybody, whether it's on a mobile phone, whatever it is, judge the best film in the world. Let's go for it. It'll be a fantastic property, by the way, the World Cinema Awards. Do that. Then we'll all enter our films. But this, it just cannot. I mean, don't get. I'm going to stop in about 8 seconds. But basically, it's this. It's beautifully.
I'd love to know how you really feel.
Yeah, it's beautifully marketed, and there's no sense of sour grapes here. I mean, you just have to people make movies, and it doesn't matter whether you win that particular award or not. Yeah. It's really. I mean, I really think that any filmmaker worth his salt across the world, or her salt, will say, okay, if I win at Cannes, like the Dardenne brothers have won at Cannes 2 or 3 times now. I mean, if you win at Cannes, you're really pitting yourself against the best cinema in the world, regardless of language. It cannot just be English language cinema.
Rishi Jaitley from Twitter India is sitting in the second row. I think the Twitter sphere is just exploding with interest in what we just heard. Vishesh, do you want to speak to that, or?
No, me and Rahul spoke about this earlier, so we completely agree. I think because someone came and asked me, I was actually at a panel before in 2008. I had that time written my film Jannat, and I was on a panel and I just got off it, and then I think it was someone from the international press at FICCI Frames, which is held every year in India, and they came and asked me, what do you think about Slumdog Millionaire and Rahman being there, and he's winning the Oscar and everything, nominated. And I was like, you know what, honestly, in my personal opinion, Rahman's done better music. And Slumdog Millionaire is not, currently in that particular year, there were better Indian films out there. But Slumdog Millionaire is neither in the foreign film category, but goes on wins all these best film awards. And why, and what is the context of it being a Western film? What qualifies it? Because the people who backed it, because it was Fox Searchlight. So it was just, I was like, I'm completely confused by this, and this whole conversation around Slumdog Millionaire and how India should respond. And that's the whole thing. I think there is it's not, like he said, it's a club, it's an academy, they're awarding their own. It's like Harvard probably giving out the best student of the year.
No, it's fair enough.
It's that kind of a thing. And
we do that pretty objectively, by the way. So.
Yeah.
One of the things we were
just because we're talking about commerce also, it's very important for an English language film that's made in America. If it wins an Oscar or is nominated, it's great business, right? Get that completely. So there's a lot of money put behind it. That's why that machine runs, because it's great business.
It's great business.
And that's absolutely fine. So, and that's something that I don't think Vishesh has ever thought, or any filmmaker in India thinks and says, I want my film to go to the Oscars. It's like, I want my film to be successful and be watched by people, and if it's only going to happen in Jumri Talaya, that's fine,
Right.
As long as it's appreciated, as long as it goes to the audience I'm making it for. Ritesh Batra didn't make Lunchbox for American audiences, but look how well it did here. Astonishingly well. He just made a good film. Yeah. He just made a film that, and a really great film, whether it's Satyajit Ray or Ritesh Batra, will cross. And if it has universal themes and it has a sense of humanism, it will cross. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what we should care about. Will our films cross? Will other people say, what a thrill to see your film being appreciated in Malaysia, for example. Yeah. That's the thrill, I think.
I mean, there's one sense when we talk about globalization, right, which is obsessed with viewers and who they are.
Right.
Is it the diaspora? Is it moving beyond the diaspora? Is it the Middle East, Russian, East Asian markets? Is it moving to a Western audience? I'd love to move the conversation to a different aspect of globalization, which is what happens almost on the back end. So when you think about production, special effects, talent movements, I mean, obviously the industry has come a long way. And, I wonder, Deepak, if you can speak to that partly just...
No, absolutely. I mean, the talent industry, the technical industry has obviously come a long way. I think, I'd just like to jog a little bit, back a few steps. And in the globalization from a broadcast industry standpoint, I think, ZTV really, identified the Indian diaspora like maybe 20 years ago and really capitalized on that market. I mean, they really went into China, Japan, Korea, Saudi Arabia, US, UK. I mean, really, that's tapping into every nook and corner of the Indian globalization, space. So I think that clearly really started the march for a lot of others to really go in. Star, Viacom, Z really pushed the envelope 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I think, sorry, what I'll say is that I think even within India and abroad, the real consumption of Indian cinema is so high, but we don't know about it. We actually don't know. It's still, it goes away in a lot of unorganized sectors, or it goes away, like, you sell a right for an entire region. So it's not monitored as well as Hollywood is. So to be very honest, it's like you only come to know, like, when you take your films abroad or do premieres abroad or anything else, that the awareness on the films and the stars is much higher than our revenues, can even capture. So in that sense, it does travel a lot, and it travels a lot to even different audiences of different languages, and it's consumed by them.
The thing is, when people say, why doesn't Indian cinema go global, what they actually mean is, why doesn't the Indian cinema go west?
Right.
Because it has been global.
It has been.
Asia, Africa, yeah, it's seriously global. But they mean, why isn't it clicking with, intelligent audiences in America and England?
Right.
And that's uninteresting, because that's, for a filmmaker, that's, it's not a very, it's not an obsession.
This idea, I mean, it's a very interesting idea about visibility and awareness,
Right.
of movies coming from India. And there are certain things which just, just get the marketing, get the audience. There are others which don't.
Right.
The same for content produced abroad that goes into India.
Right.
There are certain kinds of things which just have very seamless audience. There are others which don't. In that context, I just wanted to ask each of you, obviously one of the issues that's been receiving a lot of attention recently is the BBC documentary, India's Daughter, which many of you have probably been following the news. By the way, have you seen it?
Yeah.
No.
Rahul?
What's funny? I've been here, so I haven't seen it.
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I mean, it would be useful just to give us a sense of the debate happening in India around the documentary and your perspective on it.
So I was traveling here just before, when it just kicked off, the whole controversy and everything in the press conference. But I had not seen it at that time because it just came out. But this whole, the banning aspect that happened for it, I think censorship in general is a question that everyone needs to ask in the globalized space. So it's not just India's Daughter specifically, but censorship is getting more and more, I think, irrelevant with the way the platforms and the internet and social media and everything is coming. So I think the argument is more not what's in the film India's Daughter, the documentary, but it's about the rules that we are going to be following all art with. Because I think the internet and everything else has changed the rules. And what institutions and governments are finding difficult is, whether it's not even entertainment, but it's about privacy and everything, is that they're finding a tough time to deal with something that is as open as the internet. So content is nothing, it's just is another opinion, and I think India's Daughter is putting opinions, it's a documentary and it's coming in there. Now the whole question is about censoring it or banning it. And how are we going to stop anything, and why are we banning it is the question. And I think that needs to be questioned and answered. The question has to be put in the right perspective. If you ask any government agency, currently even for India's Daughter, I don't know, I don't think that they can give you a clear answer on why they banned it. They picked up something from the regulations that they didn't get clearances the right way. So that's the excuse that they had to give, because they couldn't say anything creatively.
I saw the documentary. It was gut-wrenching, to say the least. It was more than a documentary. I think it was like an expose on our judicial system. And I think banning it is really just brushing it under the carpet, and just the government is ensuring that it's something like this doesn't really exist. This evil doesn't exist. I think we've got to just put the documentary out, pick the right points, and just frame the new set of rules to go after. I think there's a larger moral in India's daughter, and I think we must just not ban it, just go and put it out, and embrace it. Even the government should, even the censor board should, and unfortunately, censorship has to be looked at in a more generic point of view, and not just India's daughter, the documentary point of view, purely because India, has to, portray a new set of laws for rape, and clearly, that time has come, and we must do it now.
And as you said, it's sort of given the world we live in today.
Right.
It sort of reminds me of the interview with the movie that, had a challenge in being exhibited a couple of months ago. It's probably the most seen movie on YouTube.
Right.
It's almost a fool's errand, right, to think that one can prevent viewership.
Exactly, and in today's time, I think anyone who does the opposite or tries to attack that, is going to get more attention.
Yeah.
So I think governments and everything else are just being foolish about the whole concept of censorship and banning.
So we have a few minutes left. This could just go on for hours, as you can see. I wanted to open up to Q&A from the audience. Anyone wanted to ask a question, have an opinion? Can we start here? And my only request is just keep it short.
Yes. Hi, my question was actually for Mr. Dar. I was wondering, you talked a little bit about innovation in television programming, specifically trying to get the youth demographic through reality television. Are you thinking of expanding fictional content and fictional programming as well to try and target that demographic and other demographics as well?
Yes, absolutely. I think I missed that in my points. That's a big point in the way we are looking at it as well. Reality was just one part of the change. Seasonal fictional content is the new space that we're trying to push into the country, like in the US and even otherwise. Seasons is something that's really the new big buzzword in our country as well, and we're obviously embracing that to really push that into India.
Yeah, please.
My name is Rao. I used to be a lawyer, now I'm an actor in New York. As to the slumdog globalization and the slumdog millionaire. See, in the West, first it was in the 60s that the kid came from Rajasthan and became Western American movies. Then came from England, the English understand us more. So they gave a break to this other guy, Gandhi. And then after that came this Slumdog Millionaire. I think what they did with Slumdog Millionaire, I think they took an Indian story and made it understandable to the West. The movie didn't get the Academy, I think it's the director who got the Danny Boyle. So the Danny Boyle got the...
No, the movie got it. The gentleman is saying the movie got it.
So I think that's the beauty of because British understand us. And I have been thinking about it for quite some time. But now after that, every agent in America, New York, LA, has to be Indian. Every TV show has to be Indian. I don't know if it's part of globalization or not, but at least when I used to go, there used to be 6 people. Now, even the dead people are coming and going. But anyhow, now the Americans, because CAA and all these things, agencies, they moved to Bombay. A lot of casting is done from England. So in this globalization process, the West is moving to India. And India is not moving to the West as much as yes. I mean, we said already, there are people who saw the movies in Siberia. That is true, I met some people. There are people who see it in all Muslim world. The Bollywood has its audience. But is there a way to make India more global?
Great. I don't know if you want to respond to that, or should we just get some thoughts? Yeah, please.
So, question for Deepak and possibly Rahul too. After the success of Satyameva Jayate and seeing what Amir Khan brought in 500 million viewership, if you will, on major hard-hitting social issues, can you think of Endemol as making similar programs, but probably of a lower scale? I mean, do you need that celebrity? And Rahul, could you think of a show, or a theme that you could pick up, given the success of this show, where you kind of bring about both entertainment, so it's done intelligently with the for-profit sensibilities, but then on kind of social issues in in a very compelling way?
Well, I think Satyamev Jayate really needed an Amir to really front it. I mean, clearly, the format or the idea really was led by him. I don't think it would have been Satyamev Jayate if it wasn't for him. You know, it really is. I don't think he was playing an anchor. He was playing an ambassador for a lot of social causes. So, I mean, that really was the gear change from that show's perspective. Yes, of course, as Endemol, we'd love to work on something not similar, but something that's more socially relevant as well.
I had a question. What does anyone have any studies of what real impact does Satyamev Jayate do vis-a-vis in terms of a fictional content communicating something which has a social issue? Because I have this perception in general, it's just like there is a section of the audience that does watch and applaud what a Satyamev Jayate is doing. But the true audience is trying to reach out to, does it convert anything there vis-a-vis how fictional content in India would do? So, I mean, being part of doing more of that, does it really convert? Is the question should be asked. And when it does, it also becomes a bigger reason to go and invest into it, right?
Look, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I can only talk about, I presented a paper at the World Bank on education entertainment. And it's a known fact, I hope all of you know it, in America, which is a fantastic thing, there's a body, I've forgotten the name, that actually goes to makers of very, very popular television serials and says, look, we'd like to highlight the issue, if you could highlight the issue of rape or custodial rape or anything in your next episode of Law and Order or whatever. So you actually see, you actually see the spike in the awareness behind, say, custodial rape or child sexual abuse when you watch an episode that deals with that particular issue. And there's a body in America that actually very politely and very convincingly goes up and says, can you please put this, if I can call it, vitamin pill in one of your episodes for the year? And you see that happening very often. Right. And there's no reason why that can't be done very creatively, very seamlessly, and very gut-wrenchingly. Yeah. I mean, you can all remember stuff that you've seen on television where you say, my God, that really affected me, and it was fiction.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if your question was a rhetorical one, but this question about the impact of SMJ on awareness, attitudes, and behavior is something we're actually studying right now, in conjunction with STAR, and we'll talk about that perhaps in a few months.
I really want to know, because the thing is, there's an elemental awareness that people like us would get out of it, because if some people are disconnected to rural issues and problems, they would get aware of it. Yeah. Now, is it something that maybe sometimes some programs are reached out to probably get funding or donations in that context, but something is that if you want to really convert those audiences, then maybe like what Rahul said, like something like in a fictional stage, but actually probably have a bigger impact.
Yeah, and I interpret, Mihir, your question more generally in a sense, which is the lines between media and entertainment are blurring.
Exactly.
As news becomes more entertaining, and entertainment actually starts taking on some of these issues in some creative way, there seem to be opportunities. Yeah. Right.
But like NDTV says that it does make social television. They feel like news is actually social television. So that they don't see Satyamev Jayate as being revolutionary. Right. But the impact that it had of 500 million is
but that's also Amir. I mean, Deepak is right. I mean, he's a...
I think news television has been doing this every weekend. Yeah. You know, unfortunately, it's just not. You know, the amplifying factor was Amir. You know, there's so many such documentaries, so many great chat shows, talk shows, debates that happen on news television. Unfortunately, they don't have the same impact.
But the lynching of the man in Dimapur, who knows about that?
Yeah.
Right. It happened day before yesterday, as opposed to if somebody like him puts a spotlight on.
Okay. Maybe one more question right here.
Okay, so Indian television is filled with serials for women who are not women oriented, but who are aimed for women, to be viewed by women. But as far as I see, there are no programs for kids. I mean, I can remember for myself, like 10 years back, we had shows like Born Meeta Quiz Contest. But nowadays, I don't see anything of that sort. What children are viewing these days, they are learning from that. We don't have anything which is educational. Maybe you can come up with shows like inspiring.
I completely endorse that fact. I think that's a raw nerve that you're touching upon. I think there isn't great kids content available for our kids anymore. And I think that's a big miss in the last 8 to 10 years. There aren't great kid content available. I agree with that.
And plus, they learn from that. I mean, what they see on the television, they learn from that. If they are seeing women draped in sari and who is working in the home, that's what they'll get,
Yeah.
She's meant to do that, but that's not happening these days.
I think that is, I was in a children's film called Chain Kuli Ki Main Kuli, and I've been to the poorest schools in the country and the richest. And the first question I ask is, who has seen Chain Kuli Ki Main Kuli? And every kid puts their hand up. I say, who's seen it twice? All hands up. Who's seen it 3 times? All hands up. It's only at 4 times that a few hands go down. I can't for the life of me, all over the world, the children's market is a massive commercial market. Forget about being altruistic and all that stuff. I can't imagine why. I think it's the feudal attitude that we still have in our country where children matter less. Whereas when we realize as filmmakers, as producers of films and television content and other stuff, that this is a massive commercial. There's money to be made here to really put out good stuff. Because if you look at this country, look at the size of that pie.
Figured it out. We're out of time. Thank you so much, all 3 of you, for a fantastic conversation.